Hi, I'm Rajiv Kondal, working as Digital Marketing Director for My Loudspeaker. And today I'd like to share with you the presentation which I recently gave at a MASTERCLASSING event in Vancouver. This presentation was about bridging the last mile for your digital growth journey. And actually, it's not a presentation, it's more of a personal experience that I'd like to share with you. The experience which I've gained while working with clients like Google, Honda, Armani, Methanex, UBC, and Yukon College. So, what I have tried to do here is I have compiled the list of the questions, or rather common questions, which I got from client while doing strategic consulting for them, and that's something which I like to share with you. So if you look at these questions, I'm pretty sure that as a digital marketer yourself, you will find them very relevant, and you must have encountered them at one point or another in your digital marketing journey. And coming to my favorite question of all times, and in fact I'm a culprit to this myself as well, is there any growth hack which can double my growth? And believe me, I have asked this question at least 7 to 8 times in initial phase of my career. But with experience, what I've learned is forget the hacks if you want the growth. Because for established businesses or bigger brands, growth does not happen overnight. It comes from these three areas. Majority of the growth comes from your existing customers by optimizing the customer lifetime value. Whether it's increasing the order size, increasing the frequency of orders, implementing a loyalty program, doing a referral discounting program. So majority of growth happens from this area. 1/3 of the growth comes from the new customer acquisition whom you acquire via newer channels or better channel mix with optimized conversion practices. The rest of the growth comes from retargeting the customers who have visited your digital properties, whether it's website or an app, but did not convert for some reason. And to enable these three growth areas, you need to have three core teams in play. So starting with the teams, the first one is analytics and audit team. So usually these are the performance experts who help to define your performance more objectively in terms of percentages, in terms of stats, in terms of numbers. And then your second team is your strategy team, who are usually the integration experts who look at different channels and marketing platforms, making sure that they come together to meet your objectives. And the third, last but not the least, is your technical or implementation team who actually execute that strategy to meet the desired goals. So it sounds very obvious that actually every brand or every established businesses should have these three teams in place. But in my experience, what I've learned is that for even the most established businesses, these teams are either partially implemented or they have an overlapping function with no clear direction and accountability. So typically in our consulting, we actually resolve that. Coming back to the questions, again, one of my favorite questions which I have faced from the clients, and this is more relevant to your last mile of the digital journey. Is there any standard checklist which I can follow to cover this last mile? And answer is not a surprise. Unfortunately, there is no standard checklist because with experience, what we have learned is that established brands have custom problems which require custom solutions. So standard checklists can take you only so far. For covering that last mile of your digital optimization, you need something more evolved. And that's how we come up with digital optimization score methodology. So if we look at it, there are three inputs to it. The first one is online customer journey, second one is client systems, and third one is the revenue targets or business targets from the stakeholders. And to understand this better, let's look at these inputs one by one. So the first one is your online customer journey. On the left hand side, you have a standard sales funnel. Most of the brands have this well defined. And the middle is the high level goals for that each stage of that funnel. Again, most of the established businesses have that. And the right side is where they work either with in-house teams or external agencies like MLS to define the goals for each stage of the funnel more objectively by adding key KPIs and defining the channel mix to achieve the goals for each stage of the funnel. So we have been doing that for a long time, but recently what we have started doing is we have started adding an additional scoring layer on top of that. And this layer is actually crux of our methodology. So in this, we look at the latest digital innovations and strategies and try to determine the gap from where you are and where you should be. Some of the digital strategies we look at are determining if our social market share is optimum by using similar audiences, lookalike audiences, doing scoring for your influencer program, looking at latest SEM practices including featured snippets and advanced bidding and optimization techniques, targeting zero position in SEO via structured content and other info, making sure that we are doing non-intrusive advertising by following native ads platform technology, increasing the effectiveness of email and other communications programs by personalization, and determining the true engagement for NPS or loyalty programs. So this layer actually helps us define that last mile more quantitatively. And then basically when you have that gap, you look at the second input, which are your systems. Are your systems integrated enough to address that gap? Is there data sharing happening between the systems, which can actually optimize your digital journey? So we look into all those factors and we come up with something which is called projected growth. And then we take that projected growth and compare it with the third input, which is business growth or revenue targets or your expected growth. So we try to align projected growth with expected growth, put it all through this methodology, and output is something like this. So you have an output which actually translates your last mile into more realistic path which you can address by following best practices. It gives you more scientific digital growth projection to the extent where you can project it to certain percentages also. You have very well defined goals, data driven goals for each channel. There is an effective metric systems which tie each channel to the end business goal. And there is an optimal channel mix recommendation on the basis of cost and ROI for each stage of the funnel. We also look at scope of increasing your market share by audience augmentation. We look if there is a scope for increasing the efficiency within marketing automation. And in some cases, we also get specific channel growth inputs. For example, it could be as specific as increasing your SEM ad revenue by implementing new featured snippets and ETAs or expanded text ads. So all this actually defines your last mile more quantitatively so that you can cover that journey in more realistic fashion. I'd like to share a case study with you where we worked with a $290 million e-commerce company which was growing at a rate of about 14% year on year, and they wanted to grow at the rate of 30% year on year. And when we met the team, it was very evident that they had a very capable and intelligent chief marketing officer. They had very experienced implementation team, but everybody was so busy and so much occupied with their individual targets, they did not have any time to do effective future planning or strategic thinking. Further, when we looked into the systems, they had very isolated channels and processes. So they were like individual marketing departments, email was a different department, SEM was a different department, and there was no integrated strategy. There was no data sharing happening there. So your objectives are more generic rather than being a data-driven objective. And their marketing systems had evolved in isolation for different channels. They had different systems, so data was not being shared effectively. So we put them through this methodology, and this was the result. So we actually collaborated with them to form those three core functional teams which could complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. We looked into each channel in detail and came up with the optimal path for maximum growth. So the result was a very holistic, integrated marketing strategy which was more data driven because of the data sharing between different marketing platforms and with the augmented efficiency by marketing automation. So the results, we actually saw 23.2% growth year on year, which was 65% higher than previous 3 years. And how we achieved this? We were, with this evolved methodology, we were able to answer all the questions very objectively and quantitatively. And why I'm sharing this with you is I want you to evolve similar mindset for your team and try to come up with methodology, whether you are working with in-house team or external agency, which helps you address this last mile better. And I'll be happy to assist you in any fashion I can. You can always reach me out at Rajiv, R-A-J-I-V, at myloudspeaker.ca, or you can reach me at LinkedIn. Thank you.